we must be humble enough to accept the truth about the dangers of GMOs.
We in Ghana can be fully sustainable. We have land in abundance and none of the scarcity disturbing Europe and their own food sovereignty.
Food Sovereignty Ghana, the Peasant Farmers Association of Ghana, the General Agricultural Workers Union, GAU, Center for Indigenous Knowledge and Organizational Development, CICOD, Action Aid, the Rastafari Council of Ghana, the Vegetarian Association of Ghana, Vibrant Vegan Society of Ghana, the Center for Climate Change and Food Security, Ghana Journalists for Environment, Science, Health and Agriculture, Sankofa Vegan Society of Ghana, Sankofa Health Movement, the Socialist Movement of Ghana, the Ghana Diaspora Coalition, the Ghana Food Movement, the Organic Restoration Village Farm, the All Africa People's Revolutionary Party, Economic Fighters League, Eco-Conscious Citizens, Arocha Ghana, TRAX, Comité West African des Semences Paysannes, COASP. This is an NGO of small-scale farmers in West Africa. The African Center for Biodiversity, located in Cape Town, South Africa. Global Eco Village, GRAIN, Youth Volunteers for Environment Ghana, the Institute for Sustainable Energy and Environmental Solutions, and the Agricultural Technical Institute. We look forward to your support to keep Ghana GMO-free for life, the environment, and social justice. GMOs, genetically modified organisms, into our environment and food system. This decision, as you may be aware, will lead to grave and possibly irreversible consequences on our collective health, food, environment, and agricultural systems. It is instructive to note that Food Sovereignty Ghana is awaiting judgment on April 30th in a case already presented to the Human Rights High Court, challenging the commercial release of the BT cowpea. We feel that the Attorney General, who is a defendant in this particular case, should of all entities in this land respect the supreme authority and the jurisdiction of our courts. The move to announce the release of 14 new GMOs before a competent court of jurisdiction has based on facts determined the merit of the case is extremely premature and disrespectful of our honorable courts. In response to this blatant disregard for the autonomy of our judicial system, we instructed our lawyers last week to file a motion in application for an interlocutory injunction restraining the first to fourth defendants and respondents from proceeding any further with their planned release of 14 new genetically modified varieties of maize and soya beans. Our attention was drawn to a disturbing news article published by Kweku Zurich in the Daily Graphic online portal, and Kweku is now very famous. Daily Graphic online portal on April 4th, 2024, titled, Ghana Approves 14 New GMOs. The article reported that the Ghana National Biosafety Authority, NBA, has approved the commercialization of 14 novel genetically modified GM products comprising 8 maize and 6 soya products. We have also taken note of the response by the NBA on April 10, 2024, and wish to clarify that contrary to the assurances to Ghanaians about the safety of GM products, we feel Ghanaians do not deserve to be eating GMO, regardless of whether it is grown in Ghana or imported as food, animal feed, or for processing. Our concerns are legitimate based on independent research findings, which portray the long-term effects of consuming GMOs.
We in Ghana can be fully sustainable. We have land in abundance and none of the scarcity disturbing Europe and their own food sovereignty. All our farmers demand is infrastructural support to fully sustain we Ghanaians, their fellow Ghanaians, and keep us all healthy. Examples have been mentioned here this morning. Roads to markets, warehousing, processing options to add value. But instead, they are, and us also by extension, are being offered only genetic manipulation, lobbied for by European companies that are even selling things that are banned in their own mother countries. Is it because farmers are poor and are being kept poor intentionally, so that we too, as a lowly Ghanaian nation also being kept poor, are easier to manipulate for election purposes and nation-breaking and country-destroying for the 4 years in between those elections? For 500 years, capitalism and capitalists have ravaged the world and shown total disregard for people and Africans in particular. We can be sure then that there are puppets in Ghana's government who have shown themselves and their policies are totally for sale to public or private buyers. Again, Economic Fighters League stand in total support and solidarity with Food Sovereignty Ghana in their action against the Ghana Biosafety Authority. Thank you.
Anyone who understands simple biology will agree that if those GM seeds find a favorable environment, they surely will germinate given a little moisture and our tropical environment. If such a likely scenario takes place, such GM seeds falling from sacks loaded on the back of trucks while being transported from their port of entry to their final destination would amount to huge breaches of the protocol that govern the movement of such modified organisms. This could pose an existential risk for our local varieties that may get irreversibly crossed with GM seeds on our farms and the environment. Well aware of our rights as citizens, we feel that the government and her relevant agencies have shown a great lack of respect to Ghanaians, given that Food Sovereignty Ghana, a civil society organization, and her allies initiated a case in the Human Rights Court in 2017, challenging the commercial release of a GM cowpea variety, which is still awaiting judgment on April 30th, 2024. FSG and our allies wish to remind the public of our collective view as stakeholders of Ghana's growing food industry, that Ghana's challenges in food production will not be solved by the inclusion of GMO in our agenda. The bare truth, rather, is that Ghana's agricultural sector needs investment to build roads from the farm gates to the markets. Otherwise, the very GMO they are pushing to grow in this land will also rot on the farms, like tons of plantain, cassava, and other crops that Ghanaian farmers work hard to grow. Let no one propose GMOs to Ghana before properly understanding that without increased investment in processing and storage facilities to drastically reduce post-harvest loss, GMOs themselves would also go waste on farms. Without meaningful investment in irrigation infrastructure to allow for year-round farming, Ghana will continually rely on rainfall while growing GMO. That obviously means that GMO crops will perish from lack of water. Without access to crucial supports like credit for farmers, GMO seeds will not alleviate their plight, let alone improve their welfare as being promised. We say to our key regulators of Ghana's food and agriculture environment, first things first. First things first means we must focus on what is of highest priority in times of challenge. We cannot be blind to the fact that the greatest threat to food production in our beautiful country is the wanton destruction of our farmlands, forests, and waterways with impunity by greedy foreigners, aided and abetted by some Ghanaians. At this moment, it is appropriate to remind ourselves of an ancient African proverb which says, I quote, "We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children." Ghana's policymakers seem more excited about the reviews from international scientific community rather than the legitimate concerns of Ghanaians on the ground here. It is worth reminding them, most politely, that given that all Ghanaians, including children, will be the target of these consumable technological innovations, it will be more ethical to seek the approval of the Ghanaian people than that of stakeholders abroad. In 2017, FSG presented a case to the Human Rights Court seeking several reliefs, some of which could have long-lasting consequences for the agenda to introduce GM into Ghana. At this stage, the case is before a competent court of jurisdiction. It would have been ethical for the National Biosafety Authority as an industry regulator to wait for the outcome of the court's findings, especially given the peculiar and personal importance of food to all beings. FSG and our allies are concerned about the quantum, quality, and lack of risk assessment and risk management of the BT cowpea by the relevant stakeholders before such approvals are endorsed as safe for our health and the environment. Thousands of Ghanaian farmers who grow the organic version of the soya bean will be rendered jobless if this proposed release of the GM soya bean goes ahead. The socio-economic implications for the welfare of these farmers, their households, and their local communities will be incalculable. Once GM soya is grown in Ghana, this will alienate the buyers of the original convention soya who see Ghana as one of the few last international marketplaces where you can still buy non-GM soya. What and whose long-term interest will such an intervention serve? As civil society organizations working in the national interest of all, we are concerned about the risks and unintended consequences of bioengineering. Regardless of what side you are on, we must be humble enough to accept the truth about the dangers of GMOs. We invite all responsible and sound-minded Ghanaians to join us to officially register our alarm and displeasure with the announced intention of Ghana's key regulators to release 14 GM varieties into our food. We call on all of you in the media to teach your families, your neighbors and friends about the potential hazards of consuming foods that contain GM inputs. We encourage you to reject this disturbing violation of our right to eat nutritious food by making a conscious effort to ask your food supplier if the cowpeas, maize or soya beans you wish to purchase contain GMO. Therefore, as a coalition, to defend the rights of Ghanaians, we clearly demand the following. 1. We demand that the National Biosafety Authority, NBA, puts an immediate stop to this planned release of 14 GM crops until a nationwide engagement campaign is carried out that lays matters out clearly for Ghanaians to understand what is at stake and thereby accept or reject the commercial release of GMOs.